Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Cosmic Circus review. My name is Vin. Today with me is special guest, Miss Lizzie Hill, editor-in-chief of the Cosmic Circus
Hello, how are you guys doing out there in the universe,
and the Cosmos.
in the cosmos?
Today we are reviewing the original Superman 1978 and Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut. I think these movies are really special to both of us. And Lizzie, you can correct me, but I think it's probably the reason we even have the Cosmic Circus in the first place, right? These movies, I think, were so foundational for both of us growing up.
Oh yeah, certainly it was very I mean Christopher Reeve was my first Superman. I would have only been I'm not positive. I was talking to my brother. I wasn't sure if we actually saw it in theaters because I would have only been 6.
Mhm.
But I mean, it's certainly I have a very strong memory of it during the 80s, watching it a whole bunch of times, and he was my Superman. He was the
Yeah.
basis of all Supermans for me. So yeah, and then I also was watching, I was watching things like the Adam West Batman and Linda Carter Wonder
Oh,
Woman
wow.
and things like that. I was watching; those were all. I think the earliest Marvel thing would have been the Incredible Hulk TV show that I watched as well. So all those things were foundational in my love of comic book movies and live action stuff.
That's amazing. Growing up during that golden age, with Linda Carter and Adam West and
Yeah.
Christopher Reeve. So, of course, before we forget, please remember to like, subscribe, follow, support us on Patreon. A few dollars a month helps support the channel, the work we're doing here. You'll receive exclusive access to our Discord server, mailbag access to ask us questions, and early access to super cool content.
Yay!
Okay. So, of course, we're talking about Superman the movie, 1978, and the Richard Donner cut, 1980, released in the year 2000. These are both directed by Richard Donner, screenplay by Mario Puzo, David Newman, Leslie Newman, Richard Benton, starring Christopher Reeve, Marlon Brando, Gene Hackman, Margot Kidder. It's an incredible cast, especially if you look at
Oh
the
yeah.
movies at the time. Because I grew up watching this since I was like 2 years old or something. I grew up
Yeah.
watching Superman the movie. I mean, I was even younger than you were when you saw it because I
Yeah.
was like born with this VHS. So for me, I didn't understand the special people in this cast.
Hmm.
It's just the movie. But watching it now and realizing all these legends, and I'm excited for the new movie too, because they have a great cast in the new movie. And
Hmm.
I think that's part of what makes them so special. But we'll go on. Costumes by Yvonne Blake, and I think she does a fantastic job with the
Oh
costumes
yeah.
and music by John Williams, of course. All right. So Lizzie, my friend, can you tell us what are your thoughts on Superman the movie?
It's just we watched it. I watched it with my dad again like 2 nights ago, and there was a lot of like nostalgic feelings
Mhm.
and just the warm fuzzy feeling when you see Christopher Reeve as Superman. You know, what I mean, and Clark Kent, like how you just remember that sort of childhood feeling with him, and of course Margot Kidder is fantastic.
Mhm.
Um, if Rachel Brosnahan has even like a tiny percentage of what she had in those movies, then she's going to do great. um,
I hope so.
so she's one of my favorite. Like again, you talk about someone who a character in a movie or whatever that might have influenced you as your childhood. It would have been her as Lois Lane, being
Mhm.
so spunky and smart, and
Mhm.
she knows what she wants and all that. So it's and funny. They were really that we I laughed quite a bit because the
So funny.
humor that both of them have together, as well as Gene Hackman and Ned Beatty together, and
Mhm.
I can't remember Miss Tessemacher's name, but
Mhm.
that three. It's a very funny movie. The first one,
Yeah.
it's a lot of fun, wholesomeness. It's lovely, and I've missed it because it's not to strike Snyder's Snyder's Superman with Cavill. Cavill was great. It was a much darker Superman. There wasn't this sort of lovely, warm wink and a nod, and just
Mhm.
you wanted to give him a hug.
Yeah.
You don't get that with Cavill so much. I kind of had missed that in the DC universe and with the Superman
Mhm.
movies in the past years. And again with Christian Bale was fantastic as Batman, but it's not as I sort of lean towards a little more fun and lightness, and
Mhm.
he wasn't quite that, but
Yeah.
to each their own, as they say.
Especially when we were talking about like Linda Carter, Adam West, Christopher Reeve. Those are all very friendly, huggable
Yeah.
heroes, right? That
Yes.
what a great time. Because I grew up in the 90s, so my Batman was Michael Keaton. That was the
Hmm.
Batman I grew up with. And
Yep.
I had Christopher Reeve as my Superman. And at the same time, I also had the animated series. So I would watch
Mhm.
the live action movies, and I was also watching the Bruce Timm stuff with Superman the animated series, Batman the animated series. So growing up, I had the big movies, and then I had the TV shows that I would watch like all the time. Um, so I think for me, maybe the TV shows were just as influential as these movies, but I
Yeah.
didn't get to Adam West and all that until later. But I
Yeah, well,
really
that's all
loved,
I had. You had a
yeah,
huge amount of stuff to look at that point.
yeah.
I didn't have a whole lot. Wonder Woman, Batman, and the Superman movies for a while, and then eventually we got David Banner, The Incredible Hulk with Lou Ferrigno and Bill Bixby, and that has its own specialness about it. If you've ever watched that show, and there was some Spider Man, and there's some Fantastic Four little things going on that they weren't very good. I think there was a Captain America one too that was not terrific. And then eventually we got Toby Spider Man,
Yeah,
and
and
that
then
was
everything
fantastic.
changed from
Everything exploded after Toby, yeah.
starting with
And
like
well, I
Blade,
mean,
really. Yeah,
yeah, was it Blade? Okay, was trying to
98.
think of who came something
But
like that.
even
I
when
didn't really like the
Marvel,
vampires though. So
even when Marvel was like exploding in the early 2000s, me growing up, I was DC from birth because Batman and Superman. So I was like, okay, it's the B tier Marvel stuff, but Superman and Batman were always my A tier. And my Superman was Christopher Reeve. It was the animated series. Then I grew up with Smallville after that. So and then after Smallville, then there was I thought Henry Cavill was perfect casting, but he was just I didn't like the way Snyder used him. And then there was Superman and Lois with Tyler Hoechlin. And I thought he's just as good as Christopher Reeve sometimes. He's
yeah.
really fantastic. He brings a lot of different things to the role. So I've grown up in like this kind of plethora of great Superman content.
Well, I think you
Yeah.
did you not show us a picture of yourself when you were a little boy in a
Oh yeah.
Superman
Oh my God.
for play day?
Yes.
Yes.
That
So
was
you were a little
I think
tiny thing
like
in a
age
Superman.
4. Yeah,
Yeah.
age
Very,
4
very
or
little.
something. Yeah.
So yeah, you obviously were Superman crazy early on, yeah.
Always,
Uh
always my number one. And
yeah.
it all starts with Superman 1970 and Christopher Reeve and his smile. There's that great interview Christopher Reeve gave where he says, "To me, Superman is a friend," and I
Yes.
think that's the core of the character that he's just a nice guy, and like he's flying around the city, and the girl's cat is in a tree, and he has a little time, so he goes and he takes the cat out of
Yeah.
the tree. It's something I noticed, like, because now I haven't watched the movie in a while. I'm watching it again as an adult. There's things I noticed about the movie I didn't notice as a kid. I noticed kind of how sometimes he acts a little bit childish. Sometimes,
Mhm.
I also just to experiment, I watched the extended cut, which is like the 3 hour version. I just
Oh
wanted to
wow.
see what was different. And it's the same movie. I don't recommend it because the pacing is wrong.
Yeah.
Every scene is just longer. It shows off more of the set, but also it shows off more of Superman's maybe kind of his flaws. It shows him, and he's a little bit funnier. He's a little bit more immature. And I think in the theatrical movie, I think it's perfect because they cut out those moments and it creates
Mhm.
a stronger version, a stronger vision of a more confident Superman. And the extended cut, you see he's a little bit more naive. I think
Mhm.
it's just small moments that add up to it. And it was interesting for me watching these two movies now that I'm older and realizing he sometimes is immature. I think he is very young. Christopher Reeve was like 26 when he filmed these movies, which I can't even imagine. Because to me, Superman's just Superman. I can't
Yeah, I
imagine
think
it.
it was really the first thing he did. Really, that was real. Well, he did a couple things before that, but he was really discovered for Superman, as I recall. Um, Also, yeah, I mean, he is kind of neat, but it makes sense for him to be kind of naive because he grew up in Kansas with these lovely people, and then he went off for I think it was I looked at it was
12,
like 12 years or
12
something,
years.
and he
Yeah.
was up in an ice castle for all that
Yeah.
time. I mean, he was learning stuff from his father, but that would have caused him some naivete.
Hmm.
And but that's okay, and that's part of
Hmm.
what's really lovely about him is he hasn't been turned by the bad things in life. So
Yeah.
at least at that point,
And I don't want
so
to skip ahead too much, but I think James Gunn is coming back to that a little bit. From what I can tell, the new
yeah.
movie, it seems like he's like a big kind of innocent boy in this
Mhm.
world of cynical adults, and he's kind of an innocent child man, kind of with superpowers.
Yeah.
And I'm very curious at the end of our conversation, if we have time, to see how this movie will compare to that. Did you have any criticisms of the first movie watching it now?
Thought it was really good. I just
Mhm.
obviously there's the effects aren't like what we're used to seeing nowadays. Yeah, I thought they were really good. I don't really get.
Yeah.
I'm drawing a blank. What were yours? Maybe I'll think of some while you're talking.
So like I said, I noticed now more about how the character was written. that I thought they make him a little bit naive, but that's part of the
Hmm.
story, especially going
Yeah.
into Superman 2, with the decision that he makes. It's hard to have criticisms because I think so many things are well done, especially the music, the costumes, the acting. I think the writing is maybe the weakest thing, but there's still some really amazing moments that Jor-El has great speeches in the
Hmm.
movie, right? But I think there's a lot of writers in this movie, and if you look at the production history, it's pretty messy.
Yeah.
So if I had to have a criticism, I think it would be kind of the writing and some of the. I don't know if it's a criticism with Superman being naive because I think that is part of what they were trying to do with the character, kind
Yeah.
of, and especially in Superman 2. And then he learns and he has a learning moment and he has a character arc.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think with the writing is sort of a product of the time as well. And it was probably one of the first, theatrical superhero movies out there anyway, based on a comic. I don't know how many were done before that. So I think I'm very forgiving of it because of
Mhm.
it's was an the same thing with the
Yeah.
effects. It's just sort of a product of the time. So yeah, I don't have I mean, certainly it's not a perfect movie, but it's
I
so
think.
it was interesting
Mhm.
with the intro pieces looking because Star Wars came out the same year, and the intro in the beginning with the
Mhm.
titles coming across reminded me a little bit of Star Wars
Mhm.
or some other science
Mhm.
fiction thing. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's I don't
Yeah,
remember that, but
even when I was a kid, I grew up very musical. Even when I was a kid, talking like 3 years old, I knew that there was a connection between Star Wars and Superman because of the music. I
mhm,
didn't know John Williams, I didn't know what a composer was, but I knew Star Wars and Superman. There's some DNA with the shared music between them.
mhm,
And now I know that it's because John Williams did both of them within like a year. But the music is just so impactful for both of these. I think this movie, Superman 1978, it was so close to being just a disaster. I think like if you have the wrong actor,
mhm.
if you have the wrong director, which kind of almost happened, if you don't have John Williams' score, I think the whole thing falls apart. It would be some cheesy
Yeah.
B budget, embarrassing thing, almost like maybe the Captain America movie you mentioned or something like that.
Yeah, John
I
Williams makes everything better anyway. So yeah.
Yeah. Like with this movie, you really have to like listen to the music. The music carries so much of the emotion and the character
Mhm,
and the heart of it. It's really a miracle that they knocked it out of the park. And watching the extended cut, I can see the power of good editing too. Because that extended cut is weaker. It's much weaker
yeah.
because everything's just longer and you get these empty moments that don't add anything. And I think Superman's even a weaker character, but
Mhm.
you tighten it up. You have a really good editor, and then you get this theatrical version, which I think is just perfect, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm like, I am actually a fan of extra content when I really like something. So
Hmm.
I would
Hmm.
think, if you really, really like Superman and that first movie, then you might want to watch the longer one
Hmm.
anyway, once in a while, even if it doesn't flow as well
Yeah,
as
because
the theatrical.
they show off the sets a lot, which is really nice. Like these beautiful crystal sets on Krypton or in the Fortress, and
Yeah.
now I'm like, whoa, wow! It's like it's almost like they're implanting memories because I know the movie so well, but now
Hmm.
there's like extra details that I never saw before. It's like
Hmm.
false memories they've implanted, but it just ruins the flow of the movie. So I think only if you're like a real fan, you just want to try something a little different. But I
Hmm.
wouldn't recommend it as like the perfect version of the movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Superman 2, Richard Donner cut. What are your thoughts?
I thought the first one was better, first of all. I mean, again, what you're talking about with the flow, with the second one, there was a lot, like in the first hour, there's a lot of like remembering back what happened in the first movie,
Yeah,
and it kind of drags it. And I
yeah.
can't quite remember what I would have seen in theaters
Hmm.
30 years ago or whatever. So I can't remember, can't really compare it with that, um,
Theaters was
but yeah.
45 years ago.
Oh wow.
45.
Yeah, I'm old. I'm sorry. So I think, well, yeah, I think I saw 1980, so that would have made me 8 years old. So I might or might not have seen that in theaters as well. I can't
Uh,
remember. I wish I could remember. I'd asked my brother. He was 4 years older and he couldn't remember either. So I was like, oh well. I do remember. I do remember when Star Wars came out.
mhm.
My eldest brother and his girlfriend or wife at the time, I'm not sure at the time, took me to the Children's Museum in Boston. And when I got home, I found out that my mother took my brother to see Star Wars. And I was so mad. The Children's Museum was not better than seeing, but she was afraid I was going to be too scary for me because I was little. But yeah, I distinctly remember being very angry about
Oh.
that.
I just can't imagine that 1977 Star Wars, 1978 Superman, even 1979 Alien, the 1980 Empire Strikes Back, Superman
Yeah,
2. And what a time. Like the
yeah,
end of the 70s. Oh, and you have Rocky during, you have so many great movies
yeah.
during that time. Uh, the Richard Donner cut. I think it's sillier than I remember. Um,
Mm.
which is kind of nice. Like all of these guys, they're comedy. Gene Hackman is so funny in these
He
movies.
is, yeah, he really
And
is.
as a kid, I never appreciated that, but the guy is really good. He's really good in these. Ned Beatty is really funny. I noticed
Definitely.
this
Yeah.
time, I think Lex is he's a bit of an idiot sometimes. He's kind of like he has this arrogant obliviousness that he is
Yes.
intelligent, but he's kind of stupid in
Sounds like
other
some
ways.
people we know in the news.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that's part of
Yeah.
I think what makes him such an interesting villain because he's intelligent, but he's also stupid enough to believe his crazy plans, and
Hmm.
he's arrogant enough to kind of go toe to toe with General Zod, negotiating with him for Australia and Cuba. You know, he's a strange guy, but Gene Hackman makes it work so well.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Like a different actor could not have carried the role the same way at all.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm really interested to see what Nicholas Hoult does with the character too, because I really think there's DNA there that he might be taking from. Um, a lot of people say Superman 2 is one of the best sequels, like superhero sequels ever. I don't think I like it as much as others. I've always had an issue with Superman's decision in the movie, his decision to give up his powers just for Lois. And I understand that it's a character moment, and he learns his lesson during the movie. But I think Spider-Man 2 does it more effectively when he gives up being Spider-Man. I think because I saw Spider-Man 2 first, maybe
Hmm.
that's why I'm less impressed by Superman 2. I don't know. My favorite part of this movie is at the end with the time reverse, and I think that's just
I didn't
phenomenal. But
like that. I didn't
mhm.
like them doing that two movies in a row.
It
And I
wasn't
didn't
supposed to be.
recall it.
Yeah,
I didn't recall
yeah,
it from the yeah before. Yeah, and I'm watching it like, are they really doing that again? You know,
yeah.
like
So it
why?
was it was the original ending
I
of
couldn't
Superman
remember.
2. It was the
Yeah.
original ending of Superman 2, but then Richard Donner got kicked out before he
Yeah.
finished because they made Superman 2, Superman 1 at the same time.
Yes,
Superman
I saw
1
that.
wasn't finished. Superman 1 wasn't finished. So then they used the clip of the time reversal from Superman 2. They put that in Superman 1,
Uh-huh.
and then and the actual Superman 2 theatrical cut, it's a different ending. So when Richard Donner released his Richard Donner cut, then he said, "Well, I want my time reversal, so I'm going to do it. This is how it was supposed to be."
Yeah. It's
But now there's a version of Superman 1 that we'll never know the original ending of Superman 1 because it was never finished.
yeah. Huh.
You understand what I'm saying?
I mean, it was so
Yeah.
effective in Superman 1.
Oh, yeah.
It was actually more effective in Superman 1 than it is in Superman 2.
Yeah.
Because because he loves her so much and he's
Yeah.
so brokenhearted
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he's gonna
It works. It
defy
works.
everything.
Yeah.
You know, how he
And
doesn't destroy
Superman,
the earth in the process, I don't know, but that's so
yeah.
that's superhero movies, I guess. But
Yeah.
yeah,
In Superman 2, I think I like it as a science fiction idea, like oh wow, we just reverse the whole movie. We start from
yeah,
scratch. Isn't that fun? But it feels a little unsatisfying that you have this whole adventure, and now this adventure has like no consequences. It was all a dream. She doesn't remember anything.
yeah, it's that's what it feels like too. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know that there was really a reason. What was his reason behind doing that again? It's is he going to do that every time something bad happens? It's like
Yeah, it's a Pandora's
it's
box if you can just reverse time. And the first
and
movie
not
when
wreck
he
the
does it,
earth.
right? And
Yeah.
the first movie when he does it, then you have Jor-El like yelling at him from the clouds, which
Yeah.
which makes it really impactful because he's making a decision that he's not allowed to do, but he loves Lois so much that he's going to break the rules to save her.
Yeah.
And that's also kind of the immaturity that I noticed. That as a kid, I'm like, he's just being the hero. But now I'm looking at it and I'm like, is he making the right decision, or is he being selfish? And I
He's
think
being
those are just
selfish and
yeah.
that's okay. That's part of the growth of the character is that he
Hmm.
was being naive and so selfish and thinking that he could give up his powers and just for her and just for
Yeah,
love
exactly.
and of course I'm sitting there thinking is she gonna really love him as Clark though, because but she seems to love him both either way really, but you do kind of look at it going is that relationship going to continue or not, but it's part of it is his being naive and being selfish, and then he has to realize that he's got, with great power comes great responsibility,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's part of what's so great about the Spider-Man movies, because they take a lot from Superman, and I think
yeah.
they just make it a little stronger and more modern in those Spider-Man movies. Um, Jor-El has a great line about this. That's only in the extended cut. So I'm glad I watched it for this. When he's in the fortress, Jor-El has a line that says, "When does a man's obligation to those around him exceed his obligation to himself?" So like my
Yeah.
obligations to help the people around me versus my obligation to take care of myself. And I think
Yeah.
that's a real question that we all think about every day.
Yeah.
Is like where do I set the boundaries versus taking care of myself versus helping the people that I care about? And that
Yeah.
is the core of both of these movies. Superman trying his responsibility to help everyone versus his responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility, but you also need to take care of yourself, Superman. And how do
Yeah.
you balance that? And
Definitely.
I think that's such a great line. I wish it was in the original. But I do agree with the time reversal that it doesn't play well when you watch both movies back to back. So I think there's no perfect way to watch Superman 2, I think, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
unfortunately. I did feel it dragged. One of my favorite things is him taking out that bully at the end with the
Mhm.
without throwing a punch.
Oh, but now that plays differently too, because he undid all that history. So now when
Yeah.
he comes back to the bully, that bully scene should have never happened.
Yeah.
And so now
Oh,
he's
so the
beating
bully.
up a guy for no reason at all.
Well, I'm
And
sure that bully deserved it, had done it to other
anyway,
people
but
anyway. But
the way
yeah.
the way the scene works is like the bar owner is saying, "We just finished repairing the place," and then Clark says, "Oh, I've been working out since last time." But
Mhm.
none of that would make sense because of the time reversal,
Yeah.
because of the edit.
Yeah.
So
It's a little bit silly.
it's
Yeah.
a little bit sloppy, but I still think it's good. But I think Superman 1 is just more perfect.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. As I said, it's that
Yeah.
first hour kind of dragged for me. And then there was a lot of little funny moments and delightful moments in there, but it's also was like, okay,
I
let's get until she tricks him
mhm.
into exposing himself as Superman. Then that's and one of my favorite Lois moments is
Yes.
is her
Yes.
saying is her
Yeah.
saying,
Gotcha.
with yeah, gotcha. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So after he's always like, you would have killed Clark, and it's
With
I
a
don't
blank.
think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, she's
Yeah.
smarter than you, boy.
And so this is one very very controversial criticism that I have. I don't like Margot Kidder in the first movie because I think she does a lot of like you got me, and it's a lot of kind of screaming like that, and I don't
Yeah,
like that she has like spelling mistakes, and I question, is she a good reporter sometimes? And Superman 2, I think she's a much stronger character. I think
yeah,
she's very intelligent in Superman 2, and I think Superman 2 helps for me helps redeem her version of Lois a lot. Because I grew up also with the version in the cartoon, and then I grew up with Erica Durance on Smallville, and I grew up with these other versions of Lois that don't have as much screaminess and that are very
yeah.
sharp reporters, and they're a little bit more active sometimes. So for me,
So if
Margot Kidder, mhm.
if you were falling from a helicopter from very, very high up and flying, and then some man just appears in the middle of the air and grabs you, would you not scream your head off?
I know, it's fair.
It's
Yeah,
this, and I mean, I
yeah,
personally think that the spelling mistake thing was hilarious and adorable.
hmm hmm
You can. My mom was a wonderful person. She was a kindergarten teacher. She was not a great speller, so
yeah.
it's fine. That's
Yeah,
why
it's a very controversial opinion. Almost nobody agrees with me, but
yeah.
she's never been my favorite version of
I
Lois.
don't like her
Yeah.
smoking. But
Sure.
aside
Yeah.
from that, and I wanted to say, okay, one of the least favorite things, or I don't know, something I noticed in the second one that I didn't really notice in the first one was the product placement.
Oh yeah, the Marlboro. Yeah.
Yeah, and the giant Coca-Cola and the JVC Entertainment in the
Yeah.
back of the two villains as they're blowing people down the road there. I was like, oh, I don't remember that in the first one. I was like, they must have gotten some good money from that.
It's probably the producers. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Giant, giant
Yeah.
signs. Yeah.
And just really quickly, of course, we also have to say Christopher Reeve. He's I think what makes his Clark work so well is that he makes him very clumsy and charming
Yeah.
but clumsy, and then his Superman is so deeply sincere. He's so like just
Wholesome and
he stands
warm
up
hug
straight,
and
and he's
yeah.
like he has this quiet energy, but the sincere, honest intensity. It's amazing how he portrayed those two characters.
Yeah, and he does it without being seeming arrogant or mean at
Hmm.
any point, really. He's just I don't know how you look at him as Superman and not smile, most of the
Yeah.
time, except for when he's suffering,
And when he's angry, when he's serious, oh God, we're all in trouble now. Like
yeah,
when he's like upset at Lex or something, and there's an intensity there that's almost scary because it's like he's such a nice guy all the time, and now
yeah.
when he's serious, it's serious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, if anybody's out there looking for a Christopher Reeve movie to check out, I remember there's one called Death Trap with Michael
Yep,
Caine.
I love that
That's
one. Yeah,
excellent. That's really excellent. He does a fantastic job in that as well.
very good, very good. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, before we go, Superman 3, 4. Do you have any thoughts on those?
my memory of three is attached to Richard Pryor because my older brother was listening to Richard Pryor stand up stuff and so was listening to a lot of foul mouth stand up when I was a very small child. And I was very, he was a fantastic storyteller and a fantastic comedian as well. And I was quite fond of him. So I was like, oh boy, Richard Pryor's in Superman now. So, oh, great. So that was my main good takeaway from that. And I think this is the one where Superman is kind of evil for a time, so I
Mhm,
didn't like
mhm.
that so much. So that's my thought on that one. And the fourth one, I don't really remember too much about.
That's fine. That's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah,
That's the one with Nuclear Man and
a
Lex
nuclear
Luthor's
man. Yeah.
nephew. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
very strange one. Superman 3, I have a really weird soft spot for it because it's full. There's the thing where Richard Pryor is trying to get all the money that gets rounded off, and then he's trying to collect that
Hmm.
in a bank account, which I think is like a really fun, silly idea. I don't even know why that's in a Superman movie, but
Hmm.
that's a fun idea. And then you have Clark Kent versus evil Superman, which I think is a great idea. And then you have I don't remember what it is at the end, but there's a group of other villains and they create a robot lady at the end. And so you have all these weird different storylines happening in one movie. And I appreciate it for that. They had no idea what they were doing in that movie. But I there's just something about its weird chaotic energy that I really like because there's so many weird ideas that I like all in
Hmm.
one movie. And so for me, I enjoy Superman 3, even though I know a lot of people don't. But Superman 4, I just can't stand. I can't stand it at all. All right. And 2025, do you have any expectations, any thoughts, any fears for this new movie, especially after watching these classic ones?
I mean, I think and I hope that Gunn brings some of this sort of lighthearted wholesomeness back to Superman, and and revive some of these same sort of feelings about the warm feelings about Christopher Reeve's Superman in this new character. Also, I think my father and I watched together Mrs. Maisel with
Yeah.
Rachel Brosnahan,
Yeah.
and so we might try to go see this in theaters when it comes out because he was very fond of her, and I think she's got a lot of really great potential to
Mhm.
bring back some of Margot Kidder's better qualities as Lois. So yeah,
Mhm.
I'm looking forward to it being a little bit more of a warm hug rather than a dark brood than some of the previous Supermans were.
I was struggling for this one for a while because from all the trailers and stuff, I didn't understand what he was doing with Superman. Like I didn't
Mm-hmm.
understand his take completely. And then in the last few weeks, I think as we got more footage, now I get it. I completely get what he's doing, and I'm really interested to see it. It seems like he's taking Superman as like he's kind of experienced, but this is his sophomore year. And
Mm-hmm.
if you even look at the etymology of sophomore, sophisticated moron. So he knows what he's doing, but he's still kind of reckless, um, which is similar material from what we got from Superman 2. He knows what he's doing, but he's still kind of reckless. And so I'm excited to see this. Like, I don't know if you saw, there's a clip when he walks into Lex's office because Lex did something to the dog. And it's a brilliant scene between Superman and Lex that, to me, immediately unlocked the characters. And I
Yeah.
understand now what James Gunn is doing and how it's different and modern, but he's still taking the DNA from the original movie and he's just saying, what if we made these into modern characters? What if we added the new elements to them? What if we added some version of the Justice League? What if we added
Mhm.
more corporate corruption? But at its core, it's still this kind of like naive idealist and the super intelligent man, super rich, super intelligent man, and the competition is who is the real Superman? What
Yeah.
makes you a Superman? Being being super rich, being super smart, or is it being super kind? What makes you a Superman? And that's the great dynamic between Superman and Lex, right?
Yeah.
Anything else?
Well, I was gonna looking at some of the quotes that I wrote down
Mhm.
as I was
Mhm.
watching the first one, and it says, "Has it now become a crime to cherish life?" Is one of the things that I think I can't remember who Jarrell said that. I think, and the aspect in the first film about why Krypton blew up, and because people weren't listening to the warnings. So I
Uh-huh.
mean, even back
Uh-huh.
then, it was a woke franchise. So I'm wondering if he's going to have some aspects of that in this as well.
Yeah.
And another powerful one was he says when after Pa Kent dies, these things I can do, all these powers, and I couldn't even save him. That was, I think, something that carried him through. In part of the reason why he did what he did in saving Lois in that first one is just he can't stand all the things he can do. He's got to be able to. He wants to save everybody, but especially people he loves. So
Yeah, that that
um,
that quote is one of the most powerful quotes that's always stayed with me. Like I know
yeah,
this whole movie like inside and out pretty much from memory, but that quote is always like you feel it in that emotion. And that even comes back to Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2, but there's so many funerals in those movies and
yeah,
Peter Parker loses so much. But that DNA comes back from Superman 1 from Jonathan Kent's funeral. So I think those Spider-Man movies built on what Richard Donner did, and that's part of what
hmm,
made Sam Raimi's movie so good too.
yeah.
But
I'm sure they took notes. Yeah,
yeah, that's the core of these characters. That moment, I have all these powers and I couldn't save him. Then let me see if I can at least try to save everyone else. It does break it just a little bit when he can time travel.
hmm.
Then why doesn't he
Yeah,
time travel more?
it's
And
that was too much. So hopefully
yeah,
James won't cross some lines that we were saying. Really, James?
yeah. And in Smallville, there's one episode where Lana dies. Then he time travels, and Jor-El tells him there's going to be consequences. So he
Yeah.
saves Lana, but then Jonathan dies because of that. That's how Jonathan dies in Smallville, which
So
is
Christopher Reeve time traveled twice, and then we had Superman 4. So that must have been the consequence.
that's how we got the nuclear man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right. Are we good? Are we done?
I think so. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed our little short chat about these two monumental movies.
Yeah.
Be sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment below. We have so much Superman content coming out like this month. But also, if you go back through our backlog, I've talked a lot about Superman in the past. We have a lot of articles, a lot of podcasts. So there's more and
Talking
more and
about
more
the
Superman.
comics as well. Yeah. The comic
Yeah,
reviews, a bunch of them.
yeah. Vic and I, our Superman video just came out, I think, last week, right? So
Yeah.
if you guys are excited, there's lots of Superman content for you to check out. If you're excited for the new movie, let us know in the comments. I'm Vin. You can find me on Blue Sky at Vin Writes Words.
I'm Lizzie Hill. You can find me at Miss Lizzie Hill on Blue Sky and on X and on Instagram as well.
Of course. Be sure to follow the CosmicCircus.com and Blue Sky and at My Cosmic Circus, where you can find more reviews, articles, editorials, and opinions like the ones you just watched. Thanks, guys. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye. And special thanks to our Patreon supporters. If you'd like to see even more videos and extended content, please subscribe at the link in the description.
Thank you.